Welcome to the 9:30 a.m. session. First of all, before we begin, a quick thank you to Park Road Post Production, who's presenting this session. This is called The Secrets Behind the Making of the Dark Horse. These two say that there are no secrets, but I think we'll excavate a few. For those of you who don't know these two, this is James Napier Robertson, and he is a New Zealand writer-director best known for his recent feature film, The Dark Horse, which we're talking about today, an evocative drama based on the true life story of Genesis Potini. The film has been critically acclaimed and has performed outstandingly at the local box office. His debut feature, the micro-budget noir thriller, I love it. Only in New Zealand could you make a micro-budget noir thriller. I'm Not Harry Jensen was well received both at home and overseas. Over here is Mr. Tom Hern, a New Zealand producer best known for his recent feature film, The Dark Horse, starring Cliff Curtis, and Everything We Loved in 2014, directed by Max Curry. In 2010, he co-founded Four Nights Film Limited, and that same year produced the acclaimed short film Lambs by New Zealand director Sam Kelly. And today we're going to have a conversation about obviously the making of The Dark Horse, but in particular, you know, the relationship between director and producer. And
we're going to need a while.
They're going to need a while. You know, and for you two, on behalf of, you know, everyone here and everyone who's seen the film, I just want to thank you and congratulate you for such an incredibly beautiful movie. We thought before we started we would play the trailer.
Yeah. Bit of a refresher. Keeps trying to get me to join the Wi-Fi. Very persistent.
Do we need to knock those lights back?
Yeah, we do.
Is there a gaffer here?
Can we get a Keno in here on a C-stand, please, mate? Thank you.
Beautiful. There are sort of two strands to this conversation this morning, and one of them, of course, is excavating the secrets of the making of The Dark Horse, but also about this relationship here between you two. And I've got so many questions I want to ask you about this, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of you out here do as well. So instead of doing the, we talk and then at the end we have 5 minutes for questions, if anything comes up as we're talking,
absolutely, yeah,
just throw your hand up, because I think the more we can make this a complete, room conversation, the better, I think, because I'm sure you're like me, you want to know everything. The first thing I want to ask you two is...
when did Mike Kings become a film reviewer?
When did Mike...
I guess if you say something like that, it's like, cool, man, that's in. We're good.
Yeah. I didn't notice any pork in the film, so... the first thing I want to ask you is, when did your relationship as filmmakers start? Like, what was the beginning of you two working
I think you
together?
had a photo on your computer of what you look like when we first met.
I just deleted it. No, we met...
Who asked who out first?
Yeah. Oh, no, it was many tiffs before we were lovers. No, we met as teenage actors on the Cloud9 series, The Tribe. James was the heroic male lead of the show. I played a paraplegic polygamist.
And I was actually really jealous that you got to play a paraplegic polygamist, because that was so much more interesting than being like the bland kind of,
But we both wore spandex.
We did.
And it wasn't the last time that we worked together where we both wore spandex. But yeah, that was where we met, was as young actors, and we kind of joke about the show and about the sort of what the show, you know, it was pretty soapy kind of teen thing that was really big in non-English speaking territories and stuff like that.
But we took it really seriously,
Yeah.
like for us, because we were both in like our sort of teenage years, and for us it was like, this is like Shakespeare, you know, this is like, we're gonna really like take
We
it
thought we were
seriously,
De
and
Niro and Keitel, man.
yeah. So we actually, the first time that we really kind of like hung out was, I remember we, there was like this big, you know, cast of like young kids, and then, I don't know, it was like across the room we kind of saw this like sort of familiar kind of, you know, ambitious kind of, this could be, you know, serious,
Very
kinda,
serious. Like
So have
even
you-
as teen actors,
Yeah.
we were really serious about like
too serious.
the work that we wanted to do. Yeah.
And so we kind of like, we like peeled away and drove up to this spot in Wellington and sat up, and where was it?
It was like over Eastbourne in the
yeah,
hills. Like,
it is like it's like we're talking about a marriage when we first met. But you know, and we sat there with our scripts, and like, you know, with these scripts that really aren't that good. But
What tribe scripts? You went up to Eastbourne to
you
learn
were in that.
the tribe.
You were in the tribe.
Oh, I know.
you just blocked it out.
I raped a young man. Was it either of you? I know.
It just occurred to me right.
One of us.
I
One of us. Oh man, that's so funny.
But man, I tell you
Yeah.
what, it's a successful group of like young actors. You know, so many people from the tribe, and like
I actually think it's a really cool idea. I think if that got made into a film and it had like a Hunger Games treatment to it, I think it could be really awesome.
Yeah. So tell me, what was, when you were sitting over Eastbourne with your scripts, like what was it about each of you that
I mean, we were just
cemented something? Like,
we were taking it really seriously, and we were talking about things like motivation and, you know, like kind of the subtext, and really, you know, and again, as I say, for scenes that, you know, there might not be much subtext there, but, you know, you're trying to find it, and so it was like this kind of, but I think we were also, you know, as you say, you were kind of like, we were kind of envious of each other's role because, you know, as I say, Tom's character was so much more interesting and like had all this like, you know, like character to it, and, you know, could really, I mean, if you saw the photo of him in character, it's like, you know, amazing. And I was like, and I'm just this kind of like, my character's like a plank. He's kind of, you know, he's got to like propel the narrative. And he's kind of just there to sort of, you know, be a good guy, and good guys are kind of not that interesting on screen.
When you decided to work together to make films, like how did that happen, and how did you just, you know, the director-producer relationship, how did you kind of decide on that? How was that?
Well, we worked together on the tribe for 2 years. We also travelled Europe together promoting the show when we were young, and that was when we actually really became good mates.
Because for the first year when we knew each other, we hated each other.
You hated each other?
Yeah, because, you know,
Like Burton and Taylor.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then we actually both got cast in another absolutely high pedigree, like showcasing our De Niro and Keitel skills again in Power Rangers. A couple of years
More
later,
spandex.
yeah,
More
spandex. But we kept getting like, it was pretty
What is it
weird.
like putting New Zealand actors in spandex? There's just it's cruel.
Yeah. But we got cast in that show again together, so we'd worked together for like 2.5 years, and then just by chance we both got cast in that show again together. And yeah, I mean, it was awesome for young men, you know, like we were making a decent amount of money, and it was, you know, it was cool to a point, but we
And
both...
also, well, because I got to say, like, neither of us went to university. We didn't
Drama school.
We didn't study. In fact, we both kind of like flunked out of high school. So to kind of get into acting, like for me, and I know it was for you, it was like, it gave me like hope. You know, it gave me like a purpose. It made me feel like I actually had something that I could kind of bring into the world. I had some sort of, you know, and ultimately all along, for me, acting never actually was that thing, and I kind of knew it while I was doing it, but I kept, you know, if you keep getting work and you're paying your rent, and you know, you have moments where you're earning more than your dad does, and you're kind of going, wow, this must be, you know, what it's about. But actually, I was kind of the kind of shows we were doing, and the material was not really kind of that inspiring, and it wasn't really actually kind of, but yeah, being young guys, it actually was, you know, doing stuff like the Tribe
was amazing.
It was quite amazing at the time. It was really like, I can't believe someone's actually put me in a role and given me, you know, this thing to play, and they're paying me, you know, and so.
But somewhere in there, you both decided to move away from being actors.
Well, yeah.
And become filmmakers.
Yeah, there was like, I think, so frustrated out of working on shows that were enjoyable because of the camaraderie and the experience, and also, you know, the financial side of it and everything like that, and just working with great people and being on set was very cool. But I think we both reached a point where we just had a yearning to kind of work on stuff that we felt more passionately about, and stories that actually felt worth it to us. And so we both moved to LA to have a crack to try and find those kind of projects as actors in the first instance. James was there for a lot longer than I was.
And I was trying to get a film up there, which ended in a catastrophe. It completely kind of fell apart. It was terrible.
It was a script of yours.
Yeah, it was a script that I co-wrote with a guy over there, who he kind of approached me, and he was a writer, and he was actually working at a management company that I was with at the time. And you know, I for quite a long time had been wanting to move into, you know, writing and filmmaking. And so I kind of, and I'd written a bunch of stuff, but again, it's like anything. It's sort of, you know, it takes that little bit of confidence and courage to even give it a go. And so with that one, I was like, I think I was about 22 or 23, and he was like, let's co-write something and you direct it. So, you know, I was like, awesome, let's do it. So we, you know, I kind of worked on that, and the co-writing thing didn't really work. You know, we didn't kind of have the same voice. And but we kind of like, you know, and I ended up writing most of it, and then we, you know, I cast it all over there, and he was going to produce it. So I cast all these actors. I wasn't going to act in it. I did all the location scouting through like Nevada and California, and found all this sort of stuff, got it all ready, and then about 2 weeks before we were about to shoot, this guy had a complete breakdown and just disappeared. Like, stopped answering his phone, stopped answering his door. I could not, like, find him. And I had this terrible period of going, do I try and make this film without a producer? So I have to do that. But I was also, at this point, I was going to be camera operating. I was like, you know, I'd written, I'm directing, I'm going to be editing, I'm going to be, you know, doing like almost like hold a boom in one hand, and, you know. And so the thought of doing that as well, I realized it was like, just there's no way I will have a breakdown as well. So I had to like let all of these actors go, which was really, really hard, because, you know, we'd been doing rehearsals and everyone was really into it, and that kind of left me really deflated. And I had this little period of, you know, just feeling quite jaded in a way about how that had panned out. And then around that period, Tom called me up and was like, hey bro, I'm in Venice, come and have a beer. And I was like, you know, all right, I'll go and drown my sorrows, and, you know, and we're sitting at this bar. That's exactly
that's what happened every day, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah. And so we went and had a drink at this bar, and, you know, just as mates, not like, you know, and then at some point, I think after enough drinks, you were like, I want to produce something and I want you to direct it. And I was like, great, I've got just the script. And I remember thinking with the script, which was called Empty Land, you know, I remember thinking, it's not perfect. Like, it actually, you know, I mean, I kind of, it could do with a bit more work. But the one thing I know is that he'll love the ending because it's got this really, cool twist ending. So Tom took it, went away, called me about 2 or 3 days later and went, mate, well, I really like it, but I hate that fucking ending. And I was like, right. And that literally kind of like kicked off our thing. And then
And you wanted to, so the decision for Tom to produce.
Yeah, well, just to finish that though, so Tom then went, let's like keep working on this and take it back to New Zealand and shoot it there, and that became I'm Not Harry Jensen.
And that was the first.
Yeah.
And so how was the marriage during the making of I'm Not Harry Jensen? Because you were obviously feeling each other out as producer. I'm sorry to use that term.
That was intentional, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was intentional. As the director producer.
Well, I think like that whole experience in hindsight, like it's interesting because we were. Just to touch on one more thing is one of the reasons that I really felt a want to move away from acting as well, for me personally, was like I couldn't make any correlation while I was acting between the amount of work that I put into my craft and the fruits that it bared. So like we did, we were both regularly working actors, but there were also big periods of not working. And like I always had this thing where it's like, we were really serious. Both of us are really serious about what we do and stuff. And so like, I might have an audition coming up and it's like I'd spend 6 weeks, if I had that long to prepare for the role and like really immerse in the character, create a backstory, live it, turn up to the audition, not book the role. The next week, I'd get on the piss for the whole week, go out, paint the town red, turn up to the audition, learn my lines in the car on the way there, book the role, And that kind of, that thing of like there's no real correlation between the amount of work that I put into it and where it took me just wasn't good for me. And so that was a big thing for me of like wanting to actually take control of my destiny in a way. And originally when we first paired up, like the big motivation for me when I first started was actually to create a vehicle for myself as an actor. And that was actually really where I was coming from in the first instance, and was to be able to create my own work, because I was just adamant that acting was my thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got a role in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So right. And so you were, you were really cutting your teeth. This relationship was cutting its teeth on the I'm Not Harry Jensen. And obviously it went really well because you wanted to work again together on the...
Yeah, the relationship went well. I don't think everything about the film or the process went well. Like I think probably, I'll just quickly say from my perspective, like I messed up a big part of the producing side of things on I'm Not Harry Jensen. Like I did terrible deals. Both our distribution deal and our world sales deal were really unsatisfactory, and like that let the film down.
But that's the thing. The thing as well is about like having a relationship that actually matters and that's important and that has that you're going to live with. Is if you believe in the person, like really believe in them and really put your your faith in them, then you've got to like love them and be cool with them despite
whatever
the fuck ups or whatever it is. It's like you take the good with the bad. So you say you made mistakes. Well, I made mistakes. It's like but
that was our film school though, right?
Absolutely,
really.
absolutely.
Like we didn't go to film school and we'd spend a lot of time on set. But then I'm Not Harry Jensen was like no short. Well, James had made a couple of shorts. I hadn't made any shorts, but that was like we just jumped straight into the deep end and made that film.
But it's like this is the thing. Like for me, like an ethos with like working with anyone is I'll take like passion and commitment over like experience or like credentials or body of work or whatever any day of the week, because if someone really cares and they're really fighting for it and they like put their soul out there and they put themselves on the line, I don't care if they get something wrong, because I know that they'll be sweating that even more than I am, or whoever it is, because they'll be going, fuck, you know, I like dropped the ball, and everyone makes mistakes, you know. So, like, for me, it was funny, like, because there were things that happen, and like, I look at things in Harry Jensen, and I go, I realize I should have done that better. I could have done that better. That's, you know, but it's like at the end of the day, you know, I knew that Tom was working his ass off. He was giving everything that he got, and also,
well, that was the big thing. To boil it down, is like basically that showed us that we were both equally committed, and also there were definitely times on that first one when we let each other down in terms of the collaborative relationship, because we're learning how to work together.
Yeah, it's rocky. It's awkward, you know. It's funny. Like I remember when we were first looking at, you know, not to deviate, but I remember first looking at Cliff, and I remember talking, you know, having a lot of like chats on the phone with him about, you know, potentially, you know, the risk on both sides. And he was like, you know, at one point, and we had these like all these long phone calls, and they're really like weird, you know. They're
This is casting Cliff.
casting in
Genesis.
this, yeah. And they're like, you know, because you're kind of like feeling each other out, and it's kind of, you know,
Not that again.
there's a lot of feeling, but each other out. But you know, and he was like, at one point, I remember him going, fuck, bro, this shit's awkward, isn't it? I mean, it is. It's just there's no way around it. It's awkward, you know. But you go through that, and so we kind of had plenty of times where one of us, you know, like something happened, and you're like, man, I really didn't dig when you did that.
Yeah,
you know, I really would like. I think, you know, it would have been more respectful to do it in this way or whatever. But you work through that, you know. If you want to, you work through it.
What was the time period between I'm Not Harry Jensen finishing and beginning work on The Dark Horse? Like, were you?
I think it was about maybe a year.
Was it a year? I thought it was shorter.
And who came? Where did the idea come from initially? Who brought the film to?
It may have been a year, it may have been 6 months, but it's, yeah, I don't know.
I actually don't know either.
But well, the way we came across the story, I actually was out at home in Piha, channel surfing, hanging out on the couch or whatever, and I came across a documentary by Jim Marbrook about Genesis, and yeah, it was literally like 15 minutes into the documentary that I was just bawling my eyes out. And James and I had been looking for what the next project would be, and we knew, you know, certain qualities that we wanted that story, and particularly this character to have. And for me, you know, Jen's story really personally affected me very deeply because of my own sort of family history with mental illness, and you know, it just stabbed me right in the heart, you know. And so yeah, and so about 20 minutes into the documentary, I was adamant that was the next project that we needed to make, and one of the first things I did was call up James and said, "You've got to see this."
And I was in LA at the time with Harry Jensen over there, like trying to like push it and, you know, get it seen and do, you know, like meetings for the film and stuff. And I remember, yeah, Tom, you know, calling me and going, I've found our next film, you've got to see this. Sent me this like ripped version of this documentary that was so low res that the guys' faces were just pixels. But even then, I was the same. Like 20 minutes into it, I was just like, oh my God. Like, it was particularly Genesis. It was particularly him. He was just such a beautiful man. Like, he was such a beautiful person and character, and so interesting. And he put everything in perspective for you, because it's like when you think you're going through hard times and you think, you know, you're struggling, and then you look at someone like him and what he's going through, but he's finding a way to find hope in that and to actually give hope to other people. And it's like, what an amazing like story, you know. So I was literally like booking my flight straight back to New Zealand. Let's do it, you know. So
take us through the development of the script, because obviously both of you, you wrote the script, had a real heart response to the story, and both wanted to tell the story, and there's a kind, which is a wonderful thing, but also when you're both really passionate about it, you know, obviously you've got to agree that you're telling the, you know, how did that go in terms of the way the two of you work together? And
By osmosis.
was it?
I think, but yeah, like, it's like, I mean, we've had a lot of time to, like, know each other's sensibilities and taste. Yeah. So, like, we've had a lot of years, and we've already made a film together. So, I know what, I mean, I can, like, it's so funny, like, if if I watch a film wherever, and I can, like, literally go, that's a film Tom would love.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not always a film that I would like. There's some films, you know, that I'm like, you know, Dogville, you know, but Tom's like, I wept over that film, you know. And then, you know, there's other films.
Come on, Dogville's the bomb, right?
And then there's other films for me where I'm like, The Wrestler, man. I was like crying in the theatre, and Tom's like, yeah, it's cool. You know?
No, I was feeling The Wrestler.
Oh, yeah, right.
But it's like The Wrestler or The Fighter, there was that.
We had yeah. So this is an interesting thing, because talking about tone, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I was all about, I mean, has everyone seen The Wrestler and The Fighter? The Wrestler, Darren Aronofsky, The Fighter, David O. Russell. So they kind of came out in a similar period. Actually, Darren Aronofsky was looking like he was going to direct The Fighter at one point. Then he did The Wrestler. Also helps that they've got really similar names, you know, so you can kind of... But they are a really interesting example of the two tonal directions that this film could have taken. Because The Wrestler, you know, it's still got a very kind of Aristotelian three-act structure. It's still basically your kind of like hero journey, but it's very real. It's got that verite feel to it. It's kind of gritty. It's ugly at times. The Fighter, like, you kick off like right in the beginning of the film with this like rock and roll track, and these guys walking down the street, and it's like, you know, in the like camera moves are like very Scorsese, and then it's, you know, it's like, you know, stylized more. And we had a lot of discussions where I was like The Wrestler, and Tom was like The Fighter. And we really, but the thing is,
he's frowning now.
Yeah.
Well, no, because the thing is that he's also going, no, I liked The Wrestler, and I also liked The Fighter. So it's like, that's kind of like polarizing.
That was
but
like,
it's kind of, it was quite a, you know.
In fairness, a lot of that though was like a debate between the two films of like what we liked, not in the context of what the Dark Horse.
Well, some of it, because I remember even with myself, I remember writing like in earlier drafts of the Dark Horse, and I wrote this opening to it, because openings of films are really hard. I mean, that's, you know, openings and endings, you know, and then the second act, and then all the other bits. But,
in the middle.
Like, you know, having a really strong opening and, you know, like getting to know your characters without like really tedious exposition, and, you know, it's like learning about them while they're doing stuff, not being told it, or not having to kind of watch these arbitrary kind of relationships evolve. You've actually got to like, it's got to be like watch, you know. So I remember like, you know, and I went through all sorts of different ways of opening the film, because it was like, how, you know, what's the best way to kind of like bring us in? And this is also about style and tone. And at one point I wrote this opening, and it had this, what was the track?
Who Are We by Who?
Yeah, Who Are We by The Who. This kick-ass like, who are we, who, you know, like really, and like, I walk into the bottom, ba, ba, da, ba, ba, ba. And Genesis singing along to it in the car, you know, but like adding, like changing the words. So he's like, you know, I woke up in a Gisborne hallway and policemen knew my name, you know, and like all this kind of thing, because he was, I mean, this is if you see the documentary again, like, and you know, if you knew him, he was like larger than life. I mean, the different ways to take his character, there were like so many ways to take his character in a screenplay and in a film. You know, you could have gone any angle. The guy, you know, he was amazing. So, anyway, I kind of wrote this thing, and I think I wrote it one morning. You know, it's kind of, and I almost was like going, nah, this is too The Fighter. You know, this is too like kind of stylized and like, you know, trying to be feel good, and I feel like it's a bit of, but it kind of really, it was quite cool. And I remember then giving it to you and going, man, you know, because I was like, well, you know, thinking about the way to open it, whatever, and giving it to you, and you reading it and going, fuck, that's really cool, man. Like, hey, we should go with that maybe. Like, and I was sitting there going, I know, because it really works, but I just don't think we can. Like, I think it's got to be grittier and less entertaining than that in a way, you know, because it was like not only that you're singing, but then, you know, you do your whole thing where like, then we come out of that and the music's still cranking and you go through a whole lot of other stuff, and it's like, it's a way of like getting the audience really, you know. So, but that, like those kind of tonal discussions, it gets really delicate. And so for between the two of us, it often you end up talking about really like quite sort of almost hard to express things of finding that like perfect note, you know, and there is that musicality to it, you know. It is tone, I think, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've kind of been able to work together as long as we have, and no doubt in the future, is because ultimately we are moved by the same stuff, and we do have the same tonal barometer. We have very, very similar tastes.
So when you're developing the script, so you're writing, and obviously you're having to be in communication with, you know, with the film commission as the script's coming along. So you're functioning as the kind of the almost protector of James and the conduit with the film commission. How did that process work out for you?
Yeah, I guess like just to touch one more thing on what James was saying about the tone and the film is, I think Alex sort of spoke about it yesterday, and I think with The Dark Horse, although it absolutely made us want to pull our hair out because of how long the development period took, it was actually a really healthy thing because the amount of discussions that we had about what our movie is, what is it? You know, we even got to the point where every day I would go around to James's house and I'd go, tell me the story. What's the story?
Yeah, that was an interesting period.
Yeah. Tell me the whole film now, you know?
No, it was. It was interesting.
And it's like, and there were so many discussions and so much work on the script, and
I tell you, like, just to like jump in on that thing of the telling us, because I forgot that we actually did that, but that was an interesting thing. Because when you're writing, you know, obviously it's like, you know, there's a lot of time alone and it's just you, and, you know, and then after like a lot of drafts, you can get quite fatigued on the material, or you're kind of, you know, it's the forest for the trees and stuff. And then we did this thing, as Tom said, where Tom will come around and we'd sit on my front porch, smoke cigarettes, and I would talk through the film. And I would literally, the whole film. Yeah. And every
beat by beat.
Yeah, and not even in a sterile beat like then this happens then, but it was literally like just going, you know, oh my God, I can't even remember, but like, you know, I mean, at that point it was so ingrained in my head that you just, you're literally going, I mean, you are going and then, but it's sort of, you know, and almost talking through the dialogue of each scene and just really like literally doing like an audio book of the film. And
it very quickly reveals when something's not working too. It's like,
yeah,
you know, I wouldn't even need to say anything.
Yeah.
So James would be just talking through the beats, and then he'd get to the point and go, oh,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that doesn't work. You know, it's like we're both like in there in the zone. It's just like, wow, that's, you know, and then it's like, and then he goes around to his brother's house, and you know, and it just, you know, and it really is quite a revealing thing.
It is.
But what I was really going to say about that as a thing, and all of that process in the extended development period, which comparatively to a lot of projects, you know, isn't even that long. But what it meant is it meant that we were constantly coming closer and closer in terms of unifying our vision of what the film was, right down to almost every frame. That doesn't mean that when you know, when we came to shooting the film, that there wasn't room for improvisation or happy accidents to happen and stuff. But by the time we got to shooting, and this, I felt completely solid, 100% solid in the film that James was making, and we were 100% unified on that. And anything that I didn't feel comfortable with on that, we had the time to actually discuss that and have it out. And I think we were lucky and privileged in that way. So when we went into film, when we actually went into shooting, by the time we got to shooting, we were 100% making the same movie, which means I can then, because of that, completely empower James to direct the film and lead us during that period. And then, sorry.
When was Cliff attached? Was Cliff always in your mind to play Genesis?
No. We auditioned a bunch of really good actors. Cliff got given the script by Tim Morrison, who we had been sort of looking at one point.
Cliffy, hey mate, hey brother, hey I found the project. You're the only one that can do it, bro. I'm gonna give it to you. And yeah, it's a good script, but it's too Pākehā boys. So watch out for them, cuz.
Yeah. And so then Cliff kind of, I think he called you and Piha first, and like was, Cliff's like one of those guys where, when you're first talking to him on the phone, he kind of talks really quietly. And it's like, and you'll be going, what is he saying? Like, hey bro, so, But we ended up just like having a lot of chats about, because we were really, like Cliff's a really good actor, but it's like, this is like the hardest role ever, and there was nothing in Cliff's work that he'd done so far that showed that he could do it.
Because you said to me the other day that you asked him to audition.
Yeah.
How did that go down?
He hated it. He was like, we took it really well actually initially. Well, he just went silent.
Just went silent.
Yeah. And I think he thought, that would wear off, but we kept asking, And I remember meeting him at the airport, and we had a really good chat, and then like kind of giving him, a bit of a hug, farewell, and going, and he had his thoughts on the script, he had things that he thought, and he was like, so think about that, and I was like, cool man, and think about auditioning. And he was like, but in the end, he raised a really good point, because we didn't audition him ultimately, and I think it was a really good thing, because where he needed to get to do this role was so far from where he was that it would have been terrible. And he would have lost confidence, we would have lost confidence. It just wouldn't have been a good idea. So,
it's that weird thing with auditions, isn't it? Is that on one hand, of course, like you need to see the actor. Yeah. But on the other hand, if the project really is good, in the audition, you're never going to get close. And except, we're going to talk about Wayne Happy.
We will talk about old Wayne, but I think that's the thing as well is like. So either you audition someone and it's going to be a bit more sterile, and they might not, because there's also often the person that might be amazing in an audition then actually won't bring it on set, And with Cliff, it was an example of going, let's take a risk. Let's take a bit of a leap of faith. And we took a bunch of leap of faiths in various areas, Wayne included, and risks. But I think that's also, again, it's like a methodology or whatever. I'm a fan of taking risks. Like, I like taking risks because it's scary and it might end up being awesome. But you got to be prepared for the fact that it might fall on its face. So there was that possibility with Cliff, because then, like getting him to method act it and put on the weight, which he didn't want to do, and all this sort of stuff.
So you asked him to put all the weight on?
Yeah. Which he did not want to do. And fair enough.
He's a vegan.
He's here.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a lot of broccoli, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
broccoli masquerading as Steinlager.
Oh.
They're both green. Yeah. So yeah.
So Cliff was the first actor you attached to the project?
No, James Rolleston was.
James Rolleston was.
Yeah.
And did you know that you wanted James? Did you audition?
James was the only kid that we read for the role, and actually initially I remember going, the kid that played his brother in Boy was really interesting, and being like, wonder what that kid, like how old he is now, what he's doing, but there's something cool about him. And but he wasn't really acting anymore. Like we couldn't really kind of track him down. And then, but then it was also like, well, James Rolleston, he's got like a natural screen charisma, and so, but we brought him in for an audition, and I ended up doing a workshop with him that took about 4 hours, because particularly it was like, okay, so in Boy, he was really charming and funny, but we want to go to like this emotional, heavy place, and he was scared of that, and it was like, can we even get there? So I did this like 4-hour kind of like workshop with him and with the Dwyer brothers in Ponsonby, and it was all about trying to get to that place. And I was like throwing like Meisner at him and all this sort of stuff, like just trying to like see what would stick, and ended up doing this thing with him where it was like, I got him to just say, I got the guy that was reading with him to say, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And James is blaming this guy for the death of his father. And I got James to connect it with his own personal truth, like thinking about someone in his life that he's actually talking about who's died, and it was this guy's fault, and this guy should have saved him. And he didn't. And so he's there going, you should have saved him. You should have fucking saved him. He's fucking dead now. You should have saved him. And this guy's going, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. And kind of did this, and this is after a lot of like other sort of stuff. Did this and did this and did this. And it was really amazing. It was like one of those like Goodwill Hunting moments where, you're kind of going, is this going anywhere? Is it going anywhere? Is it going anywhere? And suddenly like just something just clicked or just happened in James. And he starts just like going, you should have fucking saved him. And like tears start running down his eyes. And it became one of the most like beautiful things I've ever seen on camera. It was just like, even thinking about it right now, I get like chills. And so, we looked at that and it was like, that's amazing. But that took like 4 hours to get there. And we won't have 4 hours on set. So, will we be able to do it? But it was enough to kind of go,
you could see that it was there.
Yeah.
And that's all you need, isn't it? If you just get that, just one moment of real truth in an audition. Then so, Tom, tell me about how you found Wayne Happy, because that's an extraordinary performance. It's he's up against, he's working with Cliff, who's a force.
Man, remarkable. And like...
where did he come from?
It would just, it makes you never want to act again. But
Cliff calls him the scene stealer.
Yeah. But we found Wayne because we had actually looked at a lot of really talented, experienced Māori actors, like established actors, for that role. Pretty much everyone that fell into the bracket. And we just didn't find, we were just looking for, once we had all those discussions and worked out what the tone of the film was, like we were saying before, one of the big things that we were really striving for was authenticity. And, with a lot of those actors, it still just sort of didn't quite ring true as authentic and felt a little bit performed and just not of the world. So we actually brought on board our team a lady, very talented lady called Yvette Reid, who's an actress. We brought her on as an additional casting director on the project. And I'd worked with Yvette on our short film directed by Sam Kelly, Lambs. And Yvette cast that project. And her absolute dedication to find these amazing people was just blew me away. So we got her on specifically in the first instance to find Ariki. She went out to the tattoo parlors in South Auckland. She went to the gang pads. She went out there by herself with her handy cam,
To gang pads.
Yeah. Captured these amazing, amazing people, non-actors. And yeah, it was just straight away we knew we were into a very rich territory there. A lot of these guys didn't, especially when it came to the more challenging material in a scene, didn't necessarily have the craft or the range to be able to pull off the scene. But man, it was amazing how many of them were willing to be vulnerable on screen, and that's a credit to Yvette. I took to big time, that she was able to get these guys to actually bare their hearts So yeah.
Yvette is amazing, and Yvette was an example again of that thing where she hadn't like cast a feature film before, and you know she hadn't done that much casting in general. She'd done a great job with Lambs, but there wasn't like heaps. But she was so passionate and just cared so much and was so committed, and that just made all the difference. You know, I mean, she did an amazing job.
But in the end, for actually finding Wayne, so she'd done all the tattoo parlors and yeah, all sorts of different places, boxing clubs and things. And then we had this kind of light bulb moment where it's like, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll hit up Wins, Work at Income New Zealand. So
yeah, because we'd hit up like road working crews, and like you're just constantly thinking anywhere that might, you know,
pull over on the side of the street if you see someone.
I remember like following a guy in the supermarket, kind of stalking him, like he looks awesome. And,
Want to be in a movie?
Just anyone you could find, you know, maybe they're the one, you know.
But in the end, we came up with this poster to put up in Wins, and it was like $1,000 a day, tattoos and criminal records welcomed. And there was a queue around the block. And Wayne was one of those guys that came from the Wins outreach. And should we play down the?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a clip of his. So just to even give it slightly more context.
Give us the backstory to this.
So then Wayne, you know, as Tom said, we had this like queue down the block, and it was like a lot of guys. You know, some guys like, you know, we were saying the other day. Like, there's one guy who was really interesting, and like it was like he's cool, and then Eve was like, yeah, there's this one problem. I was like, what? And she's like, well, he's just got out of jail. And I was like, well, that's okay. We can go. And she was like, he was in there for 16 years. I was like, okay, maybe that's a bit much. But you know, we do like 8 years or 10 years. But you know,
yeah, there's a cutoff.
Yeah. Someone died, so that's not good. But so Wayne, you know, so it was quite a simple scene, so that like all these guys that hadn't done stuff before could like, you know, have a go at it. And then there was something cool about Wayne, so we brought Wayne in, but then it was like, you know, I just figured there's so much pressure on this character. It's such a big character in the film. There's a lot of dialogue. I just, you know, want to know that he could cope, so I'm going to throw him in the deep end and bring him in for a callback opposite Cliff. And I found out later that Wayne had caught about 3 hours of bus rides from South Auckland to come to do this callback. And let's watch that.
And it's an 8-page scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
We got those. Can we
This
knock
is
those
like an
lights
earlier draft of the scene that's ultimately in the film. So he's kind of elements
We'll just turn
first
those.
take too, by the way.
First take, sitting down opposite Cliff, you know.
Never acted before.
Never.
And you said was word perfect, came in.
This isn't, well, he's pretty much, but the problem is that Cliff wasn't word perfect. You'll hear Cliff kind of like, you know, Cliff's, and the interesting thing is Cliff's sort of finding his character in this. We'd already been doing work on, so he's kind of, but he was like all over the place on the words. So Wayne's doing his best to be, but he was amazing, pretty amazingly close to it.
Gene, turn the lights on, bro. How you doing, my bro?
I'm alright. How are you doing, bro?
Yeah, I'm fine. About time you came around for a visit, eh?
Yeah, sorry.
Sit down, man. Standing there looking all serious and shit.
No.
Something on your mind, eh?
Yes.
Need help?
Oh. Bro. Stuff come on.
What about him?
Well, you know, I've got this chess club for the kids, and there's this tournament coming up in Auckland. It's gonna be awesome. We're all gonna go up in a van and stuff, me and Jedi and all the bros. No, you don't know the king. We're all going up. We're gonna take a bunch of kids from here. And I was just thought, man, that'd be awesome if we could take Connor with us.
Pretty fucking hard if he doesn't know how to play, eh?
Well, no, but that's the thing. He does know how to play. No, I'm not saying he's going to win the tournament or nothing. But I was thinking, you know, bro, if we just take him up there, show him around, give him a new experience, that kind of thing. something new. What do you reckon?
I don't know who to give the bash to first.
Oh, come on, bro.
I'll get you out the nut house, give you my home, money, car. You won't pull this fucking shit.
Oh, what do you mean?
One fucking thing I ask.
Oh, look, bro, I'm just saying that I just want to give him a, you know, he's not going to school or anything, he should be given a chance, you know?
He's been given a fucking chance. Been given the biggest chance of his fucking life, right fucking now. And you want to fuck that up?
No, I don't want to fuck it up, bro. What I'm saying is that well, you know, he's not going to school or anything, you know, you're his father, you should be trying to help him, not let him get pissed on.
You damn fucking right, I'm his father. You fucking come walking in here thinking because you got some fucking chess club, you got all the answers. Fucking telling me how to raise my boy. He lives in my world, the real world.
Look, man, it's just a game of chess, you know? Just a game.
You think teaching them some fucking kids game's gonna help solve all his problems? They shouldn't fucking let you out in the first place. Get the fuck out before I call the ward right fucking now.
Oh, fuck you.
Get the fuck out!
You fucking scared me. I'm not going anywhere till I take Tom.
He's my fucking boy. Ain't yours. I know what I'm doing for him ain't that fucking much, but it's all I got. Now get the fuck out!
I don't know where I'm going. Fucking stand over me. Fucking hell. Fucking think you are.
And cut! When you first see him, you don't want him to go.
You can hear Cliff, he's terrified.
Yeah, Cliff was terrified, and that was the key as well, because just before Wayne, we'd had this other actor who's really, you know, like experienced, good actor, really like got a lot of money, and you know, he wasn't scaring Cliff in the slightest. In fact, I ended up doing a lot of improv with them because we were trying to get there and we were struggling, and Cliff ended up being the one scaring him. Cliff was going into this like, you fucking wanna call me crazy? You fucking call me? And like, he's like spitting on him and fucking, and every now and then he'd like turn around and flick me this look like that, and then fucking like this. And this guy is just going. So I'm like, okay, he can't be the brother. Like, he can't play higher status. Then Wayne comes in, does that, and I mean, you can't fully even see it, but you can hear it there. When Cliff's sitting there going, you don't fucking stand over me, like that, he's just like, you know, totally, as I was, because it was, oh my God, is he actually going to hit Cliff? Like, I don't know. And I'm there going, should I be calling cut here? This is getting really intense, but no, this is awesome. And yeah, it was amazing. It's like just, you know, like...
What a brilliant moment for you two, you know, to find that character.
Wayne would be one of the biggest, like, success stories of this whole thing. Like, he's such a lovely guy. He's so talented.
Oh,
and
man,
his
like, performances almost always singled out. Like,
Yeah.
you know, even overseas in Toronto, like, we had some pretty big industry people saying, who the hell is Wayne Happy?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Wayne Happy.
Yeah.
It's like, that Wayne Happy
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. Fucking Wayne Happy.
It's like, can we get him over to LA? I don't know if he'll be able to get to LA with his passport, but...
We tried to get into Toronto and then found out he didn't even have a passport.
Yeah.
Managed to, like, he got one like 2 days before our screening in Toronto, but then we also found out that the length of his rap sheet was going to be also an issue of how many drunk driving charges.
Okay, we're on tape.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wayne.
I think Wayne, I've seen him talk about a lot of people, but yeah.
And where did the kids come from? Where did you find the kids?
Same sort of thing, just,
Yeah.
you know, schools, marae,
Hundreds of school
like,
kids,
you know,
basically, is Yvette and the Dwyers both saw a bunch of school kids.
yeah.
And I think the thing when we were casting the kids, which James and I were aligned on, was let's just find the best kids, the kids with the most personality, the most cinematic, interesting, watchable kids. So like there were characters obviously written on the page, but James remained malleable on all of those characters to a degree until we had cast the
So you
the
kind
kids.
of you let whoever you cast kind of
Yeah, because,
inform
to a
the
degree.
character.
because I mean, well, in the end, it was different with different kids. But ultimately, with those kids in the film, they're not having to propel the narrative in the way that a character like Mana is or Genesis. They're there as like, you know, just rich characters,
Energy,
and like
life,
color, and like
comedy.
the world, and so there is a flexibility with them more. But in the end, it was amazing because most of them, like Lyle, who plays Marangi, and you know, Calais, who plays Piripi, and they actually like they just like absolutely like nailed and slotted into the character that was on the page. Then you got a kid like Murray, who's the big boy, and there was no character Murray. You know, Te Rua, who plays him, there was nothing for him, but again, Eve was like, you've got to see this kid, he is just adorable. And we watched this thing, and I mean, he is so adorable, and it was like, he's got to be in the film. So just, Murray is born, you know, and thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, very strong gang presence in the film. You mentioned yesterday that there was a little bit of black power, mongrel mob kind of politics that the two of you had to negotiate.
Well, no, not really in the end. We thought we would, but there's like a lot of the guys in the film are ex-gang members. You know, they've really got their real past that they can bring to the role into the film, and that was really important. I mean, like Wayne. You know, Wayne's got a history with one of the big gangs, and you know, like. So that truth is in the eyes, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not faking.
And when you were down in Gisborne, you shot in Gisborne for how long?
About a week.
About a week. So most of it was up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was that week in Gisborne?
Intense.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, because we had to shut down one of the main streets in Gisborne for that opening shot of Jen walking in the rain, you know, and like we just wanted to get so much of Gisborne in the film, but didn't have long, you know. So everything, you know, I used 2 cameras and just was constantly shooting and trying to get as much as possible of the world, and you know, like as many of like the exterior moments, you know, Jen outside and people outside. I'm trying to get that all in Gisborne, you know, and then do the interiors predominantly in Auckland.
And you were shooting sort of second unit down there.
Yeah.
Was that a planned thing,
That
or
was
was
fun,
that just
actually. No, it was just that we looked at the shoot and we went, you know, it's like, it's interesting when you break down a budget or you look at a production, it's like, you know, we come from a background of doing micro budget stuff. We did Harry Jensen, but also Lambs was a $30,000 short. It was pretty ambitious for that money. And then Everything We Love was another micro budget feature. So we're used to work on micro budget stuff, and when we sort of were talking about our budget for The Dark Horse, which was in the sort of $3.5–4 million category, we were like, wow, that's so much money. Like, we're just going to have so much freedom and we'll be able to do everything that we want to do. But of course, when you start actually breaking it down, you know, the ambition in certain areas goes up, and, you know, you still have to make those decisions about how you prioritize and where you spend your money. And to go over to Gisborne and have a crew in Gisborne and to be paying them per diems and have accommodation, it's expensive, you know. And so, and there were so many other areas when we're looking at the script where we go, well, we would rather spend the money there, and we know if we're really strategic, we can actually make Gizzy feel really powerful on screen, which was always so important to the story. But also be efficient and economical. But what that meant is when we were over there for that week, as James was saying, every moment counted,
yeah.
and we needed to capture every moment. So one thing
And you
we
were
did-
shooting nights a lot too over there.
shooting nights.
Yeah, there were some tough nights.
I took the second camera body and a second camera operator and just went and shot a whole load of stuff just around the town.
Like people
just
walking
and hanging out, and just like classic kind of Gizzy landscape stuff, like urban landscape stuff, and because we just
we've got 10 minutes, and I'm sure there's a couple of questions out there. I just want to excavate some dirt. What was the biggest disagreement the two of you had in the making of it? What's the biggest scrap you had?
Oh man, like I was saying, is like what I would say is what I would say about a collaborative relationship is that you actually have to really work on it. So like we would have regular things that we don't agree on, but I think we got a lot better, especially on this one. On Harry Jensen, we had some doozies.
Did you?
Yeah. But by the time we got to this one, I think we had sort of honed the way to resolve it. It doesn't mean that we see eye to eye on everything. Like James said, I think our tonal sensibility is really close, which makes it a lot easier.
But that is important, is like that thing that we don't always agree.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like we're like one brain that's just thinking it's we often disagree. We often have a different opinion on stuff, and we'll have like a healthy debate about it. But also we know we've really firmly worked at like respecting each other's role and job. So ultimately it's like for Tom, if we, because I was like a co-producer on the film, and we'll talk about some producing stuff, and I'll say what I think about something. But ultimately, if Tom's like, nah, I really think the right thing is this, I'll be like, cool, you got it. And with the directing, Tom will say, we'll have a healthy debate about, if Tom doesn't agree with something that I want to do, but ultimately he will be like, if I'm really wanting to do it, it's like, I believe in you,
But the sort of caveat to that is that the script, during the scripting phase, it is a truly collaborative thing that we both ultimately need to sign off on before we set about on the mission. And again, like I was saying, and like Alex said yesterday, I think it's really important that the unification is at least there at that point.
Before you start
shooting. Because that's when the director does need to be 100% empowered. And I think like the only time that I would feed into James's sort of zone during that time, apart from in a supporting role, would be we would always sit and watch the rushes together every night. And if something came up then, that's a great forum as well, and a really comfortable sort of non-confrontational environment for us to have a discussion about something then. But I really had to learn for myself because, I'm a passionate creative as well, but I had to learn to sort of refrain from being vocal, on set at all, like just really...
Well, it's an interesting journey for you, from actor straight to producer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do it in 30 seconds, I'm really interested in that,
Well, it didn't take 30 seconds. It took. It just took a few years. But I mean, I guess the thing that I'll just say this about producing, that I feel really grateful for how much growth in my own life producing has blessed me with. Because, as an actor, it's sort of, as I was saying earlier, it's kind of susceptible to a sort of irresponsible but fun kind of lifestyle, and has its ups and downs. In producing, I feel like I've had to really work on a whole lot of sides of my character that didn't necessarily come naturally to me. As James was saying, we were both high school dropouts. I've had to learn accountancy, legal, business.
And an example of that, is when we sold the film to our sales agent, who one of the biggest in the world, and it was for a huge amount of money. And Tom was dealing with, at the end of the day, when it really came down to the time pressure, was dealing with so many legalities and stuff. And when we were in Toronto, and we had dinner with this guy who's the head of E1, the company, and And he was like, they thought you were a lawyer.
Yeah.
They thought you had a law background.
No,
I
because-
turned up.
that's the actor.
I turned up with my hat on backwards, and they're like, "Where's Tom?" Because I'd been doing it all on email. They thought I was like some old guy.
Yeah.
And they're like,
And you turn up.
Yeah. They're like, "Are you Tom's assistant?" I was like, "No." Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe if there's, we should quickly, if anyone's
Yeah,
got
has
questions.
anyone got any questions? Yep.
In what regard? Okay, so when we made Harry Jensen, even though I stuffed up all the business side of it and not many people actually saw the movie, it was actually quite a good movie. But before I stuffed it all up, I was in Melbourne at the market shopping the film around, and we had the breakthrough screening over there after we had had a really successful New Zealand Film Festival opening here in New Zealand. And Graham Mason, who was the CEO of the Film Commission at that point, had heard about the project, and he was so stoked in a way that James and I hadn't actually gone and approached the Film Commission to be involved in I'm Not Harry Jensen. So he was just like, who the heck are you guys? And like, so cool that you've gone and done this. We actually worked with Eddie Sampson, who I think who was a co-producer on the project as well. But after that, Graham was basically said, we want to get behind your next project. We love what you've done. And so we started looking for the project, and that's when we came across the Dark Horse. We put the film into development with the Film Commission.
And went through the traditional process. Yeah.
I've got a question stepping back a bit.
Yeah.
How did you get funding for Harry Jensen having never made a film before?
Private investment. I'd read and seen about how the Coen brothers, with their first film Blood Simple, had shot a teaser and then basically gone under D for dentist in the phone book because they figured dentists have money, called them up and gone, do you want to be a producer on a film? And like, you know, can we come? And they'd go into their lounge with their projector at the time, set it all up and play this teaser for them and then go. And they were like they had to raise like 900 grand and they raised it doing that. So I was like, fuck it, if they can do that, let's try. So we did exactly that, shot a teaser, you know, literally in about a week, just shot it, put it all together, and then we did some screenings at DigiPost, and like in the theatre, brought people in, you know, anyone we could find that, you know, like thought might have money, and screened it, and then we're like, you know, do you want to invest? And it was literally like that, private
But we
investors.
thought we were going to make it for $45,000 originally,
Yeah, and
which
that-
made us think it was really achievable, but then we made it for $175,000.
And we had this thing where we would be like, if you invest this much, you get an executive producer credit. If you invest this much, you get a blah, blah. This is when we thought it was going to be 45,000, so we made the numbers quite low. Then when it ended up inflating up to about 175,000,
I really wished I
our
did.
list of producers. I remember at the festival when it premiered, and the producer came out, and people start laughing because it's going on for so long.
Just over black.
Yeah, and they're all at the beginning of the film because it's all above the line, like that was part of the thing, and you know, it's like literally the very beginning of the film, people are just sitting there in hysterics because we've got so many producers in the film.
Yeah.
One more question, Kath.
No. Look, the thing is, you know, this film's based on a true story, but ultimately when you're making a film, like, you got to also look at what interests you and bring that to it. And for me, you know, when I hung out with Jen, like, played a lot of games of chess with him and drank with him and talked and, like, you know, and then also hung out with Noble and whatever. And, like, one of the things I learned is that Jen had a brother who'd been in the gang in the mongrel mob, who'd taught Jen chess when he was a kid. They'd grown up, they'd kind of, like, got disconnected, but Jen always looked up to him. And then this brother passed away in the gang, and it was like, and there was like the stuff, and then there was, you know, this nephew, like the brother, son, and whatever. So anyway, all that sort of stuff, that really interested me, because like right from the beginning, I was like, I do not want to make a chess sports movie. I'm not interested in making a chess sports movie. If this film ends at the tournament on a high, like a freeze frame, then it's like, I'm out. I just don't want to do that. Instead, I want to get into like the characters and the grit and the, you know, meat of it. And that was one of the things. And also, it was like, Jen's really helping these kids, but what is he helping them from? Well, it's from that kind of life. So we need to see that life and experience it to know what the other possibility would be for someone like Mana. So that was basically what brought all of that in. Yeah.
Okay, morning tea,
Maybe
I think.
we should squeeze one more.
I'm sorry, one more.
If there's time.
Yeah.
I really admire Dark Horse, but I was going to ask a question about Harry Jensen. use the location. It's more like open and light rather than your bog standard New Zealand bush. That's what I think about it best. And a good tale as well. But
Thank you.
it seemed to get very little attention.
Yeah.
Well, we actually got a lot of attention for the film around the New Zealand Film Festival launch. And in hindsight, that was potentially, you know, I know a lot of New Zealand films go through the same thing. It's like you open at the New Zealand Film Festival, all the mainstream media completely pops off. And then by the time you actually do your general release, when the film, you know, goes into cinemas around the country, you've used up all of your publicity opportunities. So you go back to those people and they go, oh no, we've already covered that, we've moved on. So actually we created a really healthy spike of awareness about the film at the festival, but people couldn't go and see the movie. So it was a complete waste in that way. And I know that a lot of other films following the same trajectory.
That's a really important thing, by the way, to
adjusted
remember
the
that,
thing,
because we learnt the hard way. That's really key, you know. It's exactly what happened to us.
The other thing is our distributor prolonged the window between when we generated that energy and the release date. So it was a long time between drinks. And so, yeah.
But yeah, it was frustrating. I was devastated, to be honest, when it came out in theatres and no one went and saw it. And I was gutted, because this has been like, you know, 4 years of your life and it's everything to you. And it's like, I can't, you know, sitting there and you see that like there was like 3 people in the theatre and you hear about it and you're just like, I can't believe this is happening, you know. It was really upsetting, and it took quite a lot of like soul searching and re-rallying to like want to get up and try and do it again, you know, because it's really crushing. But ultimately it's like, you have to, you gotta, you know, like you can like crash, but then you got to get back up and do it again. And it opened doors for us in the way where, as Tom said in Melbourne, like when the film was in Melbourne, it got like, I think it was like 3 offers from sales agents there, or like it got all this like little buzz there and interest. And Graham was there and saw that and went, whoa, what's this? What's going on? And was like, when you're next doing something.
And also when Cliff watched the film, a big thing, like for Cliff when he signed on to the Dark Horse, a big thing for him was he watched I'm Not Harry Jensen and he went, beautiful performances. James can clearly get great performances out of actors, so that was a big thing for him.
Yeah, that was a big, massive thing. It kind of gave him like, he trusted us, you know, because of that. So it's all part of the journey, you know, but yeah. It was one thing making a film and it's another releasing it, you know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.